Sorry.
That's all right. My first wife's father was a very well-known, very successful professional football player, and he was a big guy. And thank God he was gentle. He used to intimidate me every time I saw him. Anyway, because he used to say, "Okay, so what director do you have doing a picture?" And I would say, "He goes, Larry, come on, you can do better than that." And I'd say, "What do you mean?" He goes, and then he'd tell me about a game. He'd say, "Well, when I was playing the Baltimore Cup," I go, but Big Jim, what does that have to do with it? He did the same thing. Big Jim.
You better put the big word.
That's right. Oh, Big Jim.
So can you talk with us in general about what does an agent want from a writer? What's really important besides just liking them?
Well, look. That's another one that is at the gut level. No, but look, it's at the gut level. It goes like this. Some people, I think, as agents and representatives, are better and more tuned in to comedy. Some people, and I mean, broad comedy. If you notice, there are certain key personalities, right? On the writing side, on the acting side. How do they become, and they rarely make it over on the drama side? Adam Sandler, Will Ferrell, right? Now, doesn't mean they can't do drama, but they're really known for comedy. And everything they do is comedic, because we all know those are the rarer voices. I personally, for me, comedy is the hardest thing for me to read, because I never know where the edges are. In drama, you shoot somebody, good and evil. I got it. In comedy, it's always been my struggle, and I've been involved in many half-hour shows, for example, and I've had some wonderful, features over the years that were comedic. But again, it was always difficult to read and give the input. I would say to you is that the first thing is you have to write, because there's nothing more tiring than hearing another person say, "I've got a treatment, I've got a synopsis, I've got some pages, some leave behinds. Could you take a look here?" And I now call myself a writer. Writer to me is defined by what you want to do in the business. And you got to really know, obviously, the conditions of what it takes. If you want to be a football player, you know what the rules are about how you have to put on equipment and how you run, and you've got to be able to tackle, blah, blah, blah. In writing, the same principle. Are you a drama writer? Are you a thriller, suspense, melodrama? Do you want to do daytime soap? Are you reality? So each of those have their own kind of dimension. Now, when I started out as a young agent, which is very different than today, the television universe was totally separate and disconnected to the motion picture world. And there was this terrible bifurcation between all flowing into one thing, but TV writers were not allowed to be feature writers, and feature writers deigned never to be TV because they were going backwards, they thought. If you notice now, in the last 5 years, finally, we see this enormous and wonderful cross-pollination between the writers and motion pictures. Why? Because the market, meaning the audience, the eyeballs, human beings, have demanded a certain kind of product, a certain kind of storytelling that they weren't getting before. Knots Landing and Dallas were one-dimensional kind of mini soaps. They were elevated a little bit above the daytime stuff, but they were still in the same kind of universe. Now what we're seeing is like Mad Men, or we would see Deadwood, or we'd see Black Donnellys, or Lost, right? It's a very more unique. But look at all the feature personalities, the feature talent that's crossing over board. Putting the actors aside, we're only talking about the writers and the directors. And so I would say to you is that you have to make a determination where you want to play in the world. If you want to play in the TV world, you have to understand the conditions to do that. You have to write a sample episodic show, several of them probably, that are fitting the zeitgeist of where somebody said, if you said, I wrote some spec 1 hour shows on a TV series that was 3 years old, it may not work. But if you did something that was like Criminal Mind or The Unit, they might go, "Oh wow, those are good samples," to get a sense of how you write and how you understand character and how you understand the flow of the show. If you're a motion picture writer, and you want to, and that's the world you live in, the 3-act structure versus 7 or 8-act structure, you have to make that determination. Now, I do know that sometimes, and I think more now than ever, television writers that are the showrunners of these, or co-showrunners, are looking for people who have personalities, not all the time, but you're starting to see a greater 30% of the population of motion picture writers who can bring character and voice that is different, more unique, more unusual, than what they're seeing in television. They want to infuse that into that television dynamic to give it something bigger than it's getting at the moment. So it makes the screen even larger than it seems when you descope it, most particularly when you descope it down. So I would just say to you that it's up to you individually, if that answers the question, individually determine which pursuit you want to have. Clearly, at the agency level, most of the agencies are divided up between television agents, motion picture, and those departments are very clearly separate. If you go to the studio level, you just ask a television executive, when was the last time you sat down with a feature executive in your own company? I'll bet anybody here right now, put your money on the table, $100 hasn't happened. So you don't see this cross-pollination at all levels. So it's up to you or the agent to be the one that pushes that. So if you say, I'm a TV writer, and I want to do a motion picture, and I wrote this spec script, and you know nothing about motion pictures, you've obviously, in that instance, reached your Peter principle. You know, on the other side, you're a motion picture writer, and you want to write television, and your agent doesn't know anything about television, you reached your Peter principle. When I started out, and like with my colleagues, I made it a point that I didn't want to be one-dimensional. I wanted a three-dimensional view of the way it worked, and my appetite, I was very fortunate, it was pretty big. And my appetite was, and still is, that I wanted to be in television motion pictures. And so I made it a point that I represented TV people and I represented motion picture people. Because I always anticipated and expected that this day would come where we would see this convergence. And has it happened? In the biggest way.
Yeah.
So cable, obviously, Showtime, FX, HBO, Turner, clearly, in a certain way have I think, parted the Red Sea with that particular way and created that new path. But for me personally, I like the fact that, but don't forget, that's kind of anti-corporate. If you want a corporate agency, you're going to be in the TV world, they'll assign you TV agents, and you'll be in the feature world. And what will happen more often than not, if you're making more money in television, you're less likely to get more support in the feature. You're making more in the feature, they're not going to mess with that picture and TV. As you all know, what department do you think makes more money, television or motion pictures?
Television.
Yeah, 3 to 1. All because of the package.